There is a hidden force that shapes nearly every conversation, relationship, business deal, political campaign, and social interaction in the world. Most people never notice it. They believe decisions are made logically, that people say what they mean, and that actions are driven by simple intentions. But beneath the surface lies something far more powerful: influence. The Manipulation Code, 15 Laws of Influence, explores the invisible psychological mechanisms that guide human behavior. It reveals how people can be persuaded, motivated, directed, and sometimes controlled without ever realizing it. This is not simply a book about manipulation in the negative sense. It is a deep exploration of human nature itself. It uncovers why people trust certain individuals, follow leaders, buy products, stay in unhealthy relationships, and make decisions that often seem irrational afterward. The journey begins with a difficult truth. Human beings like to believe they are independent thinkers, yet much of their behavior is influenced by emotions, social pressures, subconscious triggers, and carefully crafted messages. Every day, thousands of invisible influences compete for attention. Advertisers, politicians, influencers, corporations, friends, family members, and even strangers constantly shape perceptions and decisions. One of the most important lessons of the book is that perception is often stronger than reality. People rarely react to facts alone. They react to the meaning they assign to those facts. Two individuals can experience the same event and reach completely different conclusions because their perceptions differ. The master influencer understands this principle. Instead of changing reality, they shape how reality is perceived. The book explains that emotions are the true engines of decision-making. While people often justify choices with logic, the initial decision is usually emotional. Fear, hope, desire, excitement, pride, belonging, and insecurity have tremendous power over behavior. The most effective influencers do not argue endlessly with facts. They connect with emotions. They understand that a message that makes someone feel something is far more powerful than a message that merely informs. As the reader moves deeper into the book, another fascinating principle emerges. People are naturally drawn to certainty. In a world filled with confusion and complexity, confidence becomes attractive. Individuals who speak with conviction often gain influence even when they possess less knowledge than others. This explains why charismatic leaders can inspire large groups of people. Their certainty creates a sense of security that others find comforting. The author explores the law of reciprocity, one of the strongest psychological forces in existence. Human beings feel an internal pressure to return favors. When someone provides value, assistance, kindness, or gifts, a subtle sense of obligation is created. This principle has influenced human cooperation for thousands of years. Skilled influencers understand that giving often comes before receiving. By creating value first, they increase the likelihood that others will respond positively later. Another powerful law focuses on social proof. People constantly look to others when deciding how to behave. If a restaurant is crowded, it appears more desirable. If thousands of people support an idea, it gains credibility. If everyone in a group believes something, individuals often adopt the same belief without extensive analysis. The desire to belong is deeply rooted in human psychology. The fear of standing alone can be stronger than the desire to be correct. The book highlights how scarcity dramatically increases perceived value. When opportunities appear limited, people suddenly pay more attention. The possibility of loss often feels more intense than the possibility of gain. A product available for only a short time becomes more attractive. A rare opportunity feels more important. Human beings are naturally wired to fear missing out, and influencers frequently use this instinct to drive action. As the narrative unfolds, the author reveals the remarkable power of authority. From childhood, people are taught to trust figures who appear knowledgeable, experienced, or powerful. Uniforms, titles, credentials, and status symbols influence perception in ways most individuals never realize. Authority creates shortcuts in decision-making. Instead of analyzing every detail, people often assume that experts know best. While authority can be beneficial, it can also become dangerous when blindly accepted. The book then turns toward the principle of consistency. Once people publicly commit to a belief, decision, or identity, they often feel compelled to behave consistently with that commitment. Human beings want their actions to align with their self-image. Influencers understand this tendency and frequently encourage small commitments first. Once a person takes a small step, larger commitments become easier to secure. Trust emerges as one of the central themes throughout the book. Influence without trust is fragile. Sustainable influence depends upon credibility, authenticity, and emotional connection. People follow those they trust because trust reduces uncertainty. Building trust requires patience, reliability, honesty, and consistency over time. While manipulation can create temporary results, genuine trust creates lasting influence. The author explores another intriguing law: people are more persuaded by those they like. Similarity, familiarity, shared experiences, and genuine warmth all increase influence. Individuals often underestimate how much personal connection affects their decisions. They assume choices are based on objective evaluation, yet emotional bonds frequently play a decisive role. A person who feels understood becomes more open to guidance and persuasion. Fear is presented as one of the most powerful motivators in human history. Entire industries, governments, and movements have used fear to influence behavior. Fear captures attention because survival is deeply embedded within the human brain. However, the book warns that fear alone is not enough. Effective influence combines fear with a solution. When people believe a threat exists and also believe relief is available, they become highly motivated to act. The narrative also examines the role of storytelling. Facts may educate, but stories transform. Stories bypass resistance and connect directly with emotions. They allow individuals to imagine experiences, see possibilities, and form emotional attachments to ideas. Great leaders, marketers, and communicators often rely on stories because stories make information memorable. Long after statistics are forgotten, powerful stories continue shaping beliefs. As the reader progresses further, the concept of identity becomes increasingly important. People do not simply buy products or support ideas, they buy versions of themselves. Decisions are often connected to who individuals believe they are or who they wish to become. The most influential messages align with identity. When an idea supports someone's self-image, resistance decreases dramatically. The book explains that attention is the gateway to influence. In a world overloaded with information, attention has become one of the most valuable resources. Every influencer competes for it. Messages that trigger curiosity, surprise, controversy, or emotion are more likely to capture attention. Once attention is secured, influence becomes possible. Without attention, even the most brilliant message remains invisible. One of the darker aspects explored in the book is the use of psychological vulnerabilities. Human beings possess cognitive biases that can be exploited. Confirmation bias encourages people to seek information that supports existing beliefs. Anchoring causes initial information to shape future judgments. Emotional reasoning allows feelings to override objective analysis. Understanding these biases helps readers recognize when influence crosses ethical boundaries. The author repeatedly emphasizes awareness as a form of protection. The purpose of understanding manipulation is not merely to influence others. It is also to defend oneself from being unconsciously influenced. Awareness creates distance between stimulus and response. Instead of reacting automatically, individuals can pause, evaluate, and make deliberate choices. Throughout the book, power is portrayed as neither good nor evil. Influence is a tool. Like any tool, its value depends upon how it is used. A teacher uses influence to educate. A leader uses influence to inspire. A salesperson uses influence to persuade. A manipulator uses influence to control. The same psychological principles can produce dramatically different outcomes depending on intention. The emotional core of the book emerges through its exploration of human needs. Beneath every decision lies a desire. People want significance. They want belonging. They want security. They want love, respect, freedom, and purpose. Influence becomes powerful when it connects with these deeper needs. Those who understand human desires gain extraordinary insight into human behavior. As the final chapters unfold, the reader begins to see influence everywhere. Conversations reveal hidden persuasion techniques. Advertisements become easier to decode. Social media platforms appear as sophisticated systems designed to capture attention and shape behavior. Even personal relationships reveal subtle patterns of influence that often operate beneath conscious awareness. Yet the book does not leave the reader feeling cynical. Instead, it offers empowerment. Knowledge removes illusion. Understanding influence allows individuals to communicate more effectively, build stronger relationships, make better decisions, and protect themselves from manipulation. The goal is not paranoia but awareness. The ultimate message of the Manipulation Code, 15 Laws of Influence, is that influence is one of the most powerful forces in human life. Every interaction contains an element of persuasion. Every decision is shaped by visible and invisible factors. The individuals who understand these forces gain a deeper understanding of people, relationships, leadership, business, and themselves. In the end, the greatest lesson is not how to control others. It is how to understand human nature. The book reminds us that beneath all strategies, techniques, and psychological principles lies a simple truth. People are driven by emotions, stories, beliefs, and desires. Those who learn to recognize these forces become more conscious participants in their own lives rather than passive subjects of influence. And perhaps that is the real code hidden within the book. True power does not come from manipulating others. True power comes from understanding influence so deeply that you can use it ethically, recognize it clearly, and remain free from those who seek to use it against you. When awareness replaces ignorance, influence becomes a source of wisdom rather than control, and that transformation changes everything. The deeper message of the book becomes even more profound when it begins exploring the invisible battle taking place inside every human mind. Most people assume influence happens only when someone else is trying to persuade them. They imagine manipulation as a tactic used by advertisers, politicians, or salespeople. But the truth is far more fascinating. Every person is constantly influencing themselves through their own thoughts, beliefs, memories, and internal narratives. The author explains that the stories people tell themselves often become the strongest form of influence they will ever experience. A person who repeatedly tells themselves that they are incapable eventually begins acting as if failure is inevitable. A person who believes they are valuable and capable approaches opportunities differently. These internal beliefs shape reality because behavior naturally follows identity. In many ways, the mind becomes both the influencer and the influenced. This realization shifts the focus from external manipulation to personal responsibility. Once people understand how influence works, they can no longer pretend they are powerless. They begin noticing how certain environments affect their emotions, how particular individuals shape their thinking, and how repeated messages gradually become accepted as truth. Awareness transforms passive observers into active decision-makers. The book introduces another powerful concept: repetition. Human beings often mistake familiarity for truth. When an idea is repeated often enough, it begins feeling correct even when evidence is weak. This psychological tendency explains why propaganda, advertising campaigns, and viral social media trends can be so effective. The brain prefers familiar information because familiarity feels safe. The author illustrates how repeated exposure creates comfort. A song that initially seems average becomes enjoyable after hearing it several times. A stranger gradually becomes trustworthy through repeated interaction. A belief that once seemed strange becomes normal after continuous exposure. This principle operates quietly beneath awareness, influencing countless decisions every day. As the narrative continues, the discussion turns toward emotional triggers. Certain words, images, and experiences activate deep psychological responses. Influential communicators understand these triggers and use them strategically. Words associated with freedom, success, family, security, and achievement often generate strong emotional reactions because they connect with universal human desires. Fear remains one of the strongest triggers discussed throughout the book. However, the author carefully distinguishes between productive fear and destructive fear. Productive fear motivates preparation, growth, and action. Destructive fear creates paralysis, dependence, and irrational behavior. Manipulators often rely on destructive fear because frightened people become easier to control. Confident and informed individuals are much harder to manipulate. One particularly eye-opening chapter explores the role of uncertainty. Human beings naturally seek certainty because uncertainty creates discomfort. Influencers frequently position themselves as providers of clarity during confusing times. Whether in politics, business, religion, or personal relationships, those who appear to have answers often attract followers searching for direction. The book reveals that people rarely follow the strongest argument. They follow the argument that reduces uncertainty most effectively. This insight explains why simple messages often outperform complex explanations. The human brain prefers clarity over complexity, even when reality itself is complicated. As readers move further into the journey, they encounter the law of emotional contagion. Emotions spread between people much like a virus. The mood of a leader can influence an entire team. The energy of a speaker can affect a crowd. The attitude of a parent can shape the emotional atmosphere of a household. Influence does not occur only through words. It occurs through emotions, body language, tone of voice, and behavior. The author describes how charismatic individuals create emotional experiences rather than merely communicating information. People remember how they felt long after they forget what was said. This emotional memory becomes one of the foundations of influence. The most memorable leaders are often those who made people feel inspired, hopeful, courageous, or understood. The book also examines the fascinating relationship between influence and status. Throughout history, social hierarchies have shaped human behavior. People naturally pay attention to those they perceive as high-status individuals. Luxury brands, celebrity endorsements, prestigious titles, and social recognition all leverage this instinct. The desire for status is deeply connected to the need for acceptance and respect, yet the author warns against confusing status with wisdom. Some individuals gain influence through appearances rather than substance. They understand how to project confidence, authority, and success even when their expertise is limited. This is why critical thinking remains essential. Influence should never replace independent judgment. One of the most valuable lessons in the book involves recognizing manipulation disguised as friendship or concern. Not all influence is obvious. Sometimes manipulation appears in subtle forms. It can emerge through guilt, emotional pressure, excessive praise, or carefully crafted dependency. The manipulator rarely announces their intentions. Instead, they create situations where others feel compelled to behave in certain ways. The reader learns that healthy influence respects freedom, while manipulation seeks control. Healthy influence presents information and allows choice. Manipulation attempts to eliminate alternatives and create dependence. Understanding this distinction helps individuals protect their autonomy while still benefiting from positive forms of persuasion. As the story progresses, the author introduces the idea that silence itself can be a powerful tool of influence. Most people focus on words, yet strategic silence often creates stronger effects than speaking. Silence generates anticipation. It encourages reflection. It can create emotional tension or communicate confidence. Skilled communicators understand when to speak and when to remain silent. Another remarkable insight concerns the power of questions. Questions direct attention. Whatever people focus on grows in significance within their minds. A simple question can completely change perspective. Instead of forcing conclusions, influential individuals often guide others toward discovering conclusions themselves. Ideas feel more convincing when people believe they arrived at them independently. The book repeatedly emphasizes that influence becomes strongest when resistance is low. Direct confrontation often creates opposition. Gentle guidance frequently produces better results. Human beings dislike feeling controlled. They prefer believing they are acting according to their own choices. The most effective influence therefore feels natural rather than forceful. Toward the final chapters, the author explores influence in the digital age. Never before have so many organizations possessed such detailed information about human behavior. Algorithms analyze preferences, habits, interests, and emotional patterns. Every click, view, and interaction becomes data. This data allows increasingly personalized forms of persuasion. The modern world has transformed attention into a marketplace. Social media platforms compete aggressively for engagement because attention can be converted into influence. The longer individuals remain focused on content, the greater the opportunity to shape beliefs, preferences, and behaviors. Understanding this reality is essential for maintaining independence in a highly connected world. The author encourages readers to become guardians of their attention. Attention determines what enters the mind, and what enters the mind eventually influences behavior. Protecting attention means carefully choosing information sources, relationships, environments, and daily habits. It means recognizing that every moment of attention is an investment with long-term consequences. As the book reaches its emotional conclusion, a powerful realization emerges. Influence is not something that exists outside of us. It is woven into every aspect of human life. Relationships depend upon influence. Leadership depends upon influence. Education, parenting, business, storytelling, and personal growth all rely on influence. The difference between empowerment and manipulation lies in intention. Influence used to elevate others creates trust and growth. Influence used to exploit others creates dependency and harm. The same psychological principles can build communities or destroy them, inspire greatness or encourage submission. The final message resonates deeply because it shifts the focus away from controlling others and toward mastering oneself. The greatest victory is not gaining power over another person. The greatest victory is understanding the forces that shape human behavior and refusing to become their unconscious victim. When people learn the laws of influence, they begin seeing the world differently. They recognize persuasion in advertisements, emotional triggers in political speeches, social proof in trends, scarcity in marketing campaigns, and psychological tactics in everyday interactions. Most importantly, they begin noticing these forces within themselves. That awareness becomes freedom. The true purpose of understanding manipulation is not to become a master manipulator. It is to become a master observer of human nature. Once a person understands why people think, feel, and act the way they do, they gain something far more valuable than control. They gain wisdom. And in a world overflowing with noise, persuasion, and competing influences, wisdom may be the most powerful form of influence of all.